start today's message with this question. How do we ignite or inspire the younger generation to do great things for God? How can we inspire or ignite the younger generation to do great things for God? We often hear the negative comments about the millennial generation. Things such as they are too cynical, anti-establishment minded, and self-centered to be productive. We struggle with the questions how to push them, how to try harder and go further in the spiritual growth to do great things for God. So that's sometimes we hear about the millennials. But we need to really look at where we can point the finger. Okay? We can even say that we even hear negative words about how the culture in the world has changed. But I think you cannot just point the finger on the culture because the church has something to do with it. So today, we're going to take lessons from 85 years old. Anybody 85 here? Are you 85? Not yet. Nanang and tatang. 90. 91. Wow. I got a long ways to go. So we're going to learn from an 85 years old that in spite of his age, inspired a younger generation. This is the story of Caleb. Remember Joshua's partner, Caleb? His story is about faith and transformation. His story is about his faith and the transformation of the younger generation. We are first introduced to Caleb in Numbers chapter 13 as part of the reconnaissance team that Moses sent out to spy the land before they will occupy it. 12 of them were sent. And as they return, they bring back a report just according to what God had promised them, that the land was really flowing with milk and honey. It was a very rich agricultural land. But giants lived there. And the giants that live there, they're not just going to pack their belongings and move. They're not just going to say, okay, welcome, and you can take over the land now. The giants dug their heels deep and were ready to defend their land. So when the 10 or the 12 saw the inhabitants of the land, they trembled. So when they returned, they said, 10 of them at least said, let's all go back to Egypt. There are giants that live in the land and we cannot defeat them. And so, they even wanted to kill Moses or stone him to death. They even said, let's have somebody else. Let's vote for somebody else to become our leader and let's go back to Egypt. And the result was God was very angry at them. He said, how long will these people treat me with contempt? So God said, you want to die? Your wish granted. Be careful what you ask. They said, we're just going to die here. We're just going to go back to Egypt. So God said, okay, you want to die? You got what you asked for. So God said, for 40 years, you'll be going around and around and around and around until all of you that came out originally out of Egypt will drop dead. Only those who were born during the journey were able to, God said, will inherit the land, except for Joshua and Caleb. And so that's what happened. So now after 45 years of wandering, they finally made it into the promised land. So it was time to divide the land. So we're going to read from Joshua chapter 14. Let's see what happened. I know I have this from verse 6, but do we have that? Okay. Let me read from verse 1, and then we'll jump there to verse 6 all the way. We're going to read the whole chapter. Now these are the areas the Israelites received as an inheritance in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, who said Nun doesn't have kids? Joshua son of Nun. That's just a joke. And the heads of the tribal clans of Israel alluded to them. Their inheritances were assigned by lot to 9.5 tribes. 9.5 tribes. As the Lord had commanded through Moses, Moses had granted the 2.5 tribes their inheritance east of Jordan, but had not granted the Levites an inheritance among the rest. So Levites, if you belong to the Levites, you don't get nothing. So if you're a pastor, you don't get nothing. For the sons of Joseph had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no share of the land, but only towns to live in with pasture lands for the flocks and herds. So the Israelites divided the land just as the Lord had commanded Moses. So all the head of the tribes were there to ask for the division of the land. Now verse 6, this is now the tribe of Judah. Now the men of Judah, or the tribe of Judah, approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb son of Jephunneh, that's Caleb again back in Numbers chapter 13. The Kenizzite said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God at Kadesh Barnea. That is where the spies rebelled. About you and me, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my brothers who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt with fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Underline those words. Follow the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So the day Moses swore to me, the land of which your feet will have walked will be your inheritance, and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years, since the time he said this to Moses, while Israel moved about in the desert. So here I am today, 85 years old. So, Caleb was reminding Joshua, who was now the leader after the death of Moses, that this is what Moses promised and God promised to me. This is the land, the mountain. He has kept me alive for 45 years. Since then, he said to Moses, while Israel moved in the desert. So here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. Wow. Should be retiring, right? He should be retiring. He said, I am as strong today. Where am I? Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there and the cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. We'll go back there, we'll come back there later. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. That's being repeated again and again. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man among the Anakites. Now, when you hear the word Anakites, those are giants. So, this is now the story of dividing the land. And Caleb and Joshua were the only two people, the only two adults that made it into the promised land who came out of Egypt. The rest were the young generation. The young generation that were born in the wilderness. And it is very clear in verse 12 that the giant's still there. Okay? When they divided the land, that didn't mean that all the enemies were gone. The giants still live there. So let me go back to my question. How can you inspire the younger generation? How can Caleb inspire a new generation to fight against the giants? How? The reason why I ask that, because Caleb faced two difficult obstacles in inspiring the younger generation. The first obstacle that he faced was that he was now 85 years old. I mean, at age 55, many of us are already planning for retirement. I like thinking all the time, like, I look at the Social Security, how much you get, and you live in California, you just cannot live here in California. That's why, I attended Sister Cynthia gave me a free class for, investment. So I attended one of those. I still need to learn more because they were talking Japanese inside there. What I mean is all about investment. I have no idea what they're talking about, except that you'll make money. Okay, so we start thinking about retirement, and I've talked to several of you, and really, if you just depend on your social security, and you still live in California, I don't know about that. You're gonna have to move back to the Philippines. And so 85 years old, especially here, you hear this often from everyone in the church, especially the older ones, like, I'm too old for that. Let the young kids do that. Let the young people do it. Right? Adults. Let the young people do it. That's what so 85 years old. So this is the first thing that he faced, an obstacle. How can he teach a young generation? Because this young generation, again, this is the second obstacle that Caleb was facing. How can you inspire a young generation that didn't have a fire in them to begin with? Why? Because this is what they learned from their parents. What they learned from their parents was murmur and complain when times gets tough. That's what they heard from their parents. Their parents all died. What they heard from their parents was just complaining and don't want to do anything when time gets tough. What they learned from their parents was the disobedience to God's command. They disobeyed God's command. What they learned from their parents was that they did not have to work hard because everything should be handed down to them. They didn't want to fight. They just want to be able to walk into the promised land and just take possession of the land. That was their parents. And that's the younger generation saw that, and that's what they got from their parents. And when things goes wrong, what they learned from their parents is that blame Moses for it. In fact, stone him to death. That's what they learned from their parents. Their parents were known as faithless generation. We have to be, you can study that part of the Bible about the parents and the next generation. They did not really teach their children anything that was good. Again, they murmur and complain when things get tough. That's what they pass on to their kids. They disobeyed God. That's what they pass on to their kids. They pass on to their kids that they didn't have to work hard because everything will be handed down to them. When things goes wrong, find somebody else to blame. Again, their parents were known as the faithless generation. Oftentimes we think, as parents, we say, how can I teach my kids? Right? How can I teach my kids to be a better person? Simple. They're looking at you. And so these were the things that Caleb was facing. He was 85 years old, and he's going to teach. Okay, again, keep this in mind that the giants were still there. If their parents didn't want to do it, how can you get these kids to fight against the giants? Because they learned from their parents. How did he do it? First of all, let's look at these two verses. And again, I told you earlier, underline these verses. Numbers chapter 14, verse 24. This is when the 10 spies rebelled and the whole nation rebelled. This is what God said. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Now jump to Joshua chapter 14, verse 9. So on the day Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, and that your children forever will, because you followed me wholeheartedly. So this is within 45 years. Okay? The fate of Caleb and his heart did not change. From the time that he said that let's go in and take possession of the land, and at the 45 years of gap, his heart never changed. So he taught the new generation by maintaining and modeling a different spirit of fire within him for 45 years, steadfast and movable spirit to the young generation. I'm pretty sure that the young generation, as they were going and around and around and around for 45 years, wondering why their parents just dropped dead in the desert, wondering why they were not allowed to go into the land. And they saw this man who is getting old. Why is he still alive and he's going in? So they must have asked a question, what is it with Caleb? Why is he still so strong? Why is he allowed to go into the land? See, Caleb modeled a different spirit to the young generation. He allowed the younger generation to see him as a model for them. The younger generation is watching. If we want to inspire the younger generation to kill the giants, then show it to them. See, the parents cannot teach them how to kill a giant because they didn't have what it takes. In other words, you cannot pass on to your children or to the younger generation what you do not have. You can only pass on to them what you have. We can talk and lecture the younger generation about obedience. But if we are as adults, if we are not obedient, then how can we teach them? Just go ahead and tell them that blame it on somebody else. Blame it on Moses. As a matter of fact, pick up a stone and blame it on Moses. So the very first thing that Caleb did to teach the young generation was his life. It was his life. They saw him. They were wondering while they were journeying in the desert, in the wilderness, why is this man still so strong? Why is this man allowed to go in? Why our parents were not? We saw that. So, again, Caleb maintained and modeled a different spirit, a fire within him for 45 years, a steadfast and movable spirit. Second, he inspired the young generation by putting his faith into action. See, when Caleb asked Joshua and reminded Joshua, Joshua, do you remember what Moses said? Moses said that he will give me this land in Hebron. Give me this mountain. And he said, I am now 85 years old, but give me this mountain. See, when Caleb asked the mountain, he was not planning for retirement. Caleb did not say, give me this mountain because I'm going to build my retirement home up in the mountain where it's overlooking the ocean and the lake. Okay? He did not say that I'm going to retire by the beach. Give me this mountain because, I'm going to go hunting all the time. No. Look at verse 14 and chapter 14, verse 12 of Joshua. He said, now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself then heard then that the Anakites, or the giants, were there and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will, listen to what he said, I will drive them out just as he said. He asked for that mountain not because he was ready to retire, but he asked for that mountain because he was going to drive the giants out. See, towards the north, see the Judah, okay? If you look at the history of Israel, is when the kingdom was divided, Judah was to the south, Israel was to the north. Judah was at the south. See, they have conquered the northern part. That's why they divided the land. But the southern part, they haven't conquered yet. They still need to drive out the people there. And so when Caleb said, give me this hill country, he was actually saying, I am not ready to retire. I am not done yet. I am still going to war. The giants that they feared for 40 years earlier, they haven't moved. They were still there. The giants that their parents refused to believe to drive out are still there. Caleb said, this ain't going to happen again. Caleb led the new generation in a military campaign, drove the giants out of the land. I mean, if you want the details of the military campaign led by Caleb, you can read Joshua chapter 15 or Judges chapter 1. Caleb didn't just model a different spirit. He showed them how to kill the giants. He walked the talk. That's what he did. This younger generation did not just see him as somebody who was different. He led them. He showed them how. So it's so hard for us to inspire the younger generation if all we do is just tell them to do it. We've got to show them how. We've got to show them how. I mean, this is a responsibility that we need to do. We've got to show the younger generation how. We cannot show them how to complain. We got to show them how to do it. Third one, and I'm almost done. Short. So what was number one? How did Caleb do it? He modeled his life. Second, he showed them how to kill the giants. He led them. Again, if you want to read how did he do it, read chapter 15 of Joshua or Judges chapter 1. He showed them how. I mean, again, keep in mind that these were the generations that did not have nothing to, they had nobody to inspire them. But it turned out to be a different generation. So, millennials, if you have heard about negative things about you, always remember, you can be the generation that killed giants. But adult, we have a part to play. Third thing that he showed them was that he made them do it themselves. Look at chapter 15 of Joshua. Verse 16. We have that. All right. And Caleb said, I will give my daughter. Do you have a daughter? I will give my daughter Aksa. Wow, what a name. You know what that name means? Those little chain that you put on your ankle, anklets. There's jewelry. That's the meaning of the name. I will give my daughter Aksa in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiryat Sephir. Othniel. I thought it was oatmeal. Othniel actually means lion of God. You know what Haniel means? God's grace, that's right. So Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, took it, so Caleb gave his daughter to Aksa, to him in marriage. What is he doing here? I mean, in the midst of a successful military campaign, driving out the enemy, this part here is recorded that Caleb said, anybody who will attack Kiryat Sephir, I will give my daughter to marry this man. And Othniel volunteered. What is he doing? Did he have to do this? No. He didn't have to do this. I don't know if his daughter was really looking for a husband. I don't know, maybe, but that's not the case. But the military campaign was ongoing. They were driving out the enemies. They were driving out the giants. In the midst of that, Caleb said, hey, anybody want to marry my daughter? That's a good way to get your daughter into marriage, right? And Othniel did. What's Caleb doing here? Caleb was allowing them to do it themselves. He was not just there doing it for them. He made them do it themselves. Caleb did not have to do this. He was winning. But he wanted the new generation to put their hands on the plow and do it themselves. He wanted them to experience the leadership position. All three approaches that Caleb used to inspire the younger generation is called in the New Testament discipleship. The same approach that Jesus used to train his disciples. He modeled his life to them. He showed them how and made them do it themselves. Discipleship. What was the result? Was there a good result? What was the fruit? He modeled, he showed them how, and he made them do it. Here's the fruit. Because of what Joshua did. This is what happened to the next generation. Let's start with Aksa. Chapter 15 of Joshua, 18 and 19. Okay. One day when she came to Othniel, she was given into marriage, okay? She urged him to ask her father for a field. Now remember that Caleb already promised a piece of land, whoever marries his daughter or go out into a military campaign. There was already a piece of land. So when Othniel came to pick her up, She said, wait a minute. Let's ask my dad for a field. She got up her donkey. Caleb said, what can I do for you, my daughter? She replied, do me a favor, special favor. Since you have given me land in the Negev, give me also springs of water. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. So what's that all about, Pastor Phil? She learned from her dad that it is okay to ask for God's favor, what he promised. Caleb said, give me this land. And that was promised to him 45 years ago. His daughter was learning from him that if you ask for God's promise and favor, God is going to do it. So she learned. Oatmeal. This is the best one. You see, when you disciple someone, when you teach someone, discipleship means it brings results, it brings fruit. See, the way that Caleb changed and taught a new generation is by discipling one. He did not change the entire generation, but if you disciple a few, the few will touch others. That's what happened to the 12 disciples of Jesus. Jesus was preaching to the crowd, but he always withdrew to the quiet place and discipled the 12. Jesus' approach was that to touch the entire world, he needed to touch and disciple 12. So what happened to Othniel? Here's what happened to Othniel. Let's see if you can remember who are the leaders of Israel. Who was the first leader of Israel? And I'm not talking about Abraham or Jacob. Who brought them out of Egypt? Moses. Who brought them into the promised land? Joshua and Caleb. See, the strategy of Caleb worked very well. Guess who are the leaders of Israel after Joshua? They were called judges. They were called judges. And guess who was the first judge? Who was the first judge? Oh, it's not Deborah yet. Okay, read chapter 2 about Judges. I want you to look at that. You have your Bible. Chapter 2 of Judges. Who was the first judge of Israel or the next leader after Joshua and Caleb? The Lion of God, Othniel. Othniel was the first leader after Caleb and Joshua. If Caleb did not take his time and he just do it himself, he did it himself, Othniel would have never trained to do it. That's the fruit. And Othniel touched a lot of lives. See, we don't have to conquer the entire generation. We do not have to change the entire generation, but we can change a generation by changing and discipling a few. How do you inspire a younger generation? Well, let me change the question. Can you inspire a younger generation? A young generation? Yes, if an 85 years old can do it, so you can. If an 85 years old can do it, there's no reason that you cannot do it. I'm done, and I'm going to go to my second part of it. I'm going now to explain to you what we have, our discipleship program. Okay? I'm waiting for the technology to kick in. Just let me know when you're ready. You might be wondering why we're changing our Bible study. This is discipleship the way Jesus did it. This is not something new. This is something that has been taught and Jesus showed it how. But somehow we got away from it. So it's basically going back to the basics. It's going back to how Jesus did it. It's discipleship. Are we almost ready? All right, so the younger generation are doing it, so yeah, it's actually my fault. I did this presentation from the Windows, and we have apples here, so it's different. Yay! That's my daughter. I'm training oatmeal. All right. Our theme for this year is what? We grow and win as one. The next frame. All right. Making disciples the way Jesus did. Yes. Okay. If you see there, the hands watering the plant. It's hands because it's a hands-on discipleship. Okay, so next. Let's say the Great Commission, because this is the model that Jesus gave us when it comes to discipleship. Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Who gave this command? And what authority does he have? In heaven and, in other words, every corner of the universe belongs to Jesus himself. There is no place where you can go where Jesus is not the Lord. So either you obey or not. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. This is what Jesus tells us to do. Okay? Now, when Jesus said, go into the world, it was not intended only for the 12. Because if it was intended only for them to do it, that means there will be no Christianity today. So in other words, what Jesus is saying, go and make disciple, make disciple, make disciple, make disciple. Okay? So there is, just go to the next frame. This is our mission statement. To bring people into relationship with Christ, disciple and equip them to make the same difference in the lives of others. That's basically what Jesus said on Matthew chapter 28. Okay? When we make disciples, because we want those disciples to make the same difference to others, just like how Caleb did it to Othniel. Next. What is the difference between a Christian and a disciple? Because many people will say, oh, I just want to be a Christian. I don't want to be a disciple. Next. The word disciple appears 261 times in the New Testament and was used to describe the followers of Jesus. Acts 11:6. The disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. So there was just a change of name. Okay? So they were called disciples. Now they're called Christians in Antioch. So what is the difference between a Christian and a disciple? Nothing. Nada. Wala. Awan. Okay. Next. This is what Jesus required of disciples. Are you a disciple of Jesus?
Yes. Amen.
Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. But Jesus told him, follow me, let the dead bury their dead. So, Jesus demands that those who follows him will follow him wholeheartedly. Okay? Next. How did Jesus do it? As Jesus ministered, someone will step out of the crowd and say, Lord, I want to follow you. Finally gathered the 12 and the disciple and disciple them to life to life, person to person, to continue the work of the ministry. Now, this is how Jesus did it. Okay? Remember that one January I preached about the cost of following Jesus? And Jesus was going there and he saw the crowd. There was a big crowd. And I said that if Jesus was a pastor today and saw a big crowd, he would be like, whoa, I have a mega church now. But Jesus told his disciples, let's get out of here. And in John chapter 3, the Bible tells us that Jesus would not submit himself to the crowd. Instead, he withdrew from the crowd. Okay? Go to the next. All right. Now it came to pass in those days that he went out the mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called his disciples to himself, and from there he chose 12, whom he also named apostles. So this was the night when Jesus was like ready. During the ministry of Jesus, there was a big crowd following him. Okay? was a big crowd following him. But this time, he prayed all night long. He prayed all night long. Now, if you pray for all night long, there must be something very important you're asking. Okay? So what he was doing was that he was going to pick the 12. He's going to pick the people he's going to disciple to affect the lives of others. So it's very important. Okay, so next. All right. It's the process. See, the apple doesn't show it. This is how Jesus said, make disciples, okay? Actually, this is not how it looks like. But in what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 28, the very heart of what he said was make disciples. Okay? To make disciples is to win, to baptize, and to train, and to send. That's how Jesus did it. And that's how he gave the command. The very heart is make disciples. And those disciples whom you make will be, you will win them, you will baptize them, and train them, and send them. That's what disciple is. Discipleship doesn't say like, win them, baptize them, and call them every Sunday to come to church. No, you have to train so that you can send. Okay, next. All right. This is the discipleship. And this is what I said. There's only going to be 10 people in every group. There's going to be a discipler. And I know there's not 10 there, but I'm just using this as an example. So the discipler will disciple those who are under him. And after graduation, those who were discipled will disciples. Because this is how it happens. I disciple, those who I disciple will disciple, and those that disciple will train. Okay? That's how discipleship works. Okay, next. Okay. The role of a discipler. Discipleship is a lifelong process. Therefore, a discipler, as a leader now, must also wear the hat of a disciple willing to learn and grow. However, the role of a discipler is to inspire and equip his students to make the same difference in the lives of others and do the work of the ministry. He must see himself as one who spiritually nurtures his students and keep them in constant prayer. That's the role of the disciple, so the leader. Then the next one, the disciple. The word disciple is from the Greek word matetes, meaning a learner or student. Jesus called his disciples to a new and different life. The new life called for a paradigm shift in their thinking, affections, actions, reactions, worldview, and perspective. Therefore, true disciples of Jesus needs to have a teachable heart and embrace learning as a lifelong activity so that he can make this difference in the lives of others. No one can be a disciple of Jesus because they think they should. You have to actually want it. Okay? So next one. Discipling method. Okay. Discussion. Prayer. Experience. And accountability. The next one, I'm going to explain this in, what's the difference? Bible study. We give out information. Discipleship making seeks out transformation. Lecture. Discussion. Teacher to student. Everyone is accountable for each other's growth. Classroom experience. It's life's experience. That's like what Caleb did. Bigger group is a smaller group. Let me stop there. And then we'll continue. The old way that we're doing, and let me just, and this is something that I talk to a lot of pastors. Bible study that we do, because a lot of churches do Bible study. It's not effective. Let me give you one good example. Brother Roy taught evangelism, and he put it so beautifully. We've been hired, what they call evangelism explosion. Okay? So we did. What result did we have? And this is not Brother Roy's fault now. I'm not blaming Brother Roy. This one, okay, there will be a group that will be evangelism group. You're going to discuss. You see, we have been given information for all throughout our Christian life. When it comes to evangelism, Brother Roy was not the person to teach us that. We have been taught that so many times. But the difference on this one is that if you belong to an evangelism group, you are going to challenge each other. And this is not about just learning, it's about discussion. It's a transformation. We're not just giving information here. We are going to challenge each one in the group. Again, I'm just using the example of if you belong to evangelism group. You're actually going to challenge each other to go out there, and you'll be accountable to each other. One group that I also we're going to do is the fruit of the Spirit group. If you just want to grow spiritually, what are the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace. If you lack in those areas, you join this group. And again, we're not just giving information. We are going to challenge and pray for one another. So next one. Okay. It's going to look like this. If you're a new Christian, you will start with a spiritual foundation. Your believers class. Doctrinal. Okay. And then you go to these different groups. Now, can we add more group later? Absolutely. But we're going to start with this. There's the fruit of the Spirit. Family relationships. Evangelism and leadership, which is where we're going to start. So if you want to learn about leadership, join the leadership. Evangelism. Join the evangelism. The beauty of this is that we don't even have to focus on one curriculum. You can just, your leaders can just open your Bible and look at that and study it with the group and challenge each group. Okay? It's family relationship, again, fruit of the Spirit. So these are just some of the things that we are studying right now. Okay, the next one. Now here it is, the group accountability. Okay. Now, look at very carefully the words that we use there. Confidentiality. Yes. Because we're being serious about this discipleship. You're going to be sharing your life with each other. Jesus shared his life with the disciples. It's a life-to-life transfer and experience. What I hear and see in the group will stay in the group. Okay? Because again, this is more of a closer relationship. So whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Authenticity. I will be as open with my life as I can be at this time. Okay. What are the, I mean, if you join the for the Spirit group, if you're very impatient, okay, you're going to be as open as you can be at this time about your being impatient. Because you'll be praying for one another and challenging each other. That's why it says there, authenticity. If you don't have joy, because the fruit of the Spirit is one of is joy. If you don't have joy, you share your, like, why are you not having joy? Why you're always so sorry? So again, you'll be praying for one another. Love. I will affirm the members of the group, no matter what some may have said or done in the past. I will love you now and pray for God to continue to transform everyone into the likeness of His Son. Okay? Because we're not just giving information, we're seeking transformation. Next. Accountability. I will ask the group to hold me accountable for specific areas of my life that is necessary for growth. With my permission, members can ask me about the goals I set regarding God, my family, my personal life, and the world. I expect you to lovingly not let me off the hook on the basis of Proverbs 27:17. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpeneth iron, so we can sharpen one another. I ask the group to please share with me areas in my life that do not reflect Jesus because I want to grow in personal holiness. Prayer. I promise to pray for others in my group on a regular basis, lifting them up to the Lord. Next. Encouragement. I understand that each one in this group is at a different point in his or her journey with the Lord. I will accept each group member as you are. I will encourage each member to progress in becoming more like Jesus. I will have my homework completed when I come to group. I mean, if there is something that a homework that you're going to do, you come ready. I mean, that's why you graduated from college, because you came ready, right? But here, all this time, a lot of Christians go to Bible studies, 20 years, 30 years, and never graduate. But here we want to graduate. Commitment. I will have my work completed when I come to group. I will choose to attend each meeting even if I fall short. I will make every effort to be present and on time. I will have high priority in my schedule. The last one. Participation. I will do my part to keep the discussion centered on biblical truth. Meaning, when we're having the discussion, don't talk about something else. Don't talk about the food. Focus. Discussions will be centered on biblical truths and the texts we're studying. I will contribute to the discussion without dominating. I will be sensitive in allowing members to share equally as we grow in Christ together. Scripture will be our final authority. So there is an agreement. Okay? So again, it's not going to be a bigger group. You're going to have more experience. Okay? So you choose. There's a sign-up sheet over there. And if you still don't, you still don't want to kill the giants, that's fine. But by doing this, we're really focusing on transformation. Okay? Again, one good example why this is better, because this is what Jesus taught us in disciple each other. The way we used to do Bible study was just pretty much information. We go back and learn 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 without action. I believe that when it comes, again, I'm just using evangelism, I believe that most of us have enough or more than enough, or a matter of fact, overflowing information about how to win people to Christ, but we are not doing it because nobody challenged us. This time the group will challenge each other. Well, application. Okay? Any question? Any question? No? Are you ready to kill the giants? Yes. It's better if we focus because we can switch later on. We can keep those the same categories, but once you finish the other one, then you can switch. Okay. But there has to be application first. In other words, you don't just go there and learn. Okay? Like for example, you sign up for evangelism this time. And after you've done evangelism for 6 months, and then you switch, you have not really done evangelism yet. So that's why we, as much as possible, we sign up with one. Okay. Any more question? Sister Nell has the sign-up sheet. Yes. This is still a Bible study, but it's a different, smaller group, different approach. Mather, we already talked about it. Mather is going to be a Bible study outreach. Okay, there is the word outreach in Mather. So in other words, the format is going to be a little bit different because it's more of a outreach now. So they can be outreach, and then whoever they reach out there will send to the spiritual foundation or the new believers, and then move forward. So in other words, there is a flow going. Brother Vinay?